Hello guys, I thought I'd make you a little video here. We've got a super duper customer that's hanging around so we can do this AutoLand here. So I just thought I'd show you a brief AutoLand. It is going to be paraphrased a little. We're not doing a full arrival and stuff like that. So just to show you the actual plan, we're here at Gatineau and we're just going to take off from Gatineau, fly to the Yankee Oscar Whiskey VOR there. Our camera's probably not picking it up. And then we'll just make a left-hand turn and intercept the Localizer for runway 07. I've got runway 07 all tuned up here, so I've got Ottawa VOR set in the current nav 1, and we also have down here, this is the actual ILS frequency. I've done everything before we take off, and for the AutoLand we actually need to have both autopilots engaged, so I need to have the same frequency in the left and the right side here, which is what we've got here. We'll flick these over from standby to active in flight, and that's when we go ahead and engage. Other than that, the FMS is all set up. We've just done a basic setup here. I didn't want to run through everything, so I just want to show you the screen displays, what they look like during a AutoLand, and we're not going to do the AutoLand checklist or any of that fancy stuff like that. And just to briefly show you the procedure here, if my camera will focus, there we go. So it's going to be the ILS 07, the GPS function here doesn't really work, so the aircraft's not going to move. And you see the VOR at the top there is where we're going to fly over the top of, and then fly outbound and make this left-hand turn to intercept the Localizer here. And as we can see, the Localizer is 109.5. So we'll switch this screen off the plan mode now. We do that again up here, so we'll flick it over onto the map mode, and now the left and the right side are the same. Have a look at our MCP panel. We got 160 knots here as our V2, and well, it's V2 plus 25. Our heading, we should be good pilots and actually set this to runway heading, right? So we'll set 270. There we go. Altitude, we're just going to go to 4,000. The actual approach here is we'll join at 3,000 feet there, so that should be fine. We'll have a look at the co-pilot side here. This excess data is a bit of a simism here, just due to the ProSim software. But what we'll do is we're going to do a full AutoLand. So basically, I'm not going to touch the controls. We're just going to use the MCP and autopilot function, and the aircraft should land itself. And we're also, when we look outside, we're in Cat 1 Viz. So we're not going to see the runway until we're about 50 feet above the ground, kind of like thing. So, well, I think it's actually 200 feet, you'll see runway lighting. So you can see the visuals aren't, we're down to minimums basically. So what we'll do, we'll get the aircraft in the air, we'll keep the recording going so you can see it all, and yeah, we'll go from there. So Captain, if you could please go ahead and flick the auto throttle 2 on. That's this one up here. Yep, on, and then when you're ready to go, hit the toga button, and eyes outside, and you're going to have control of the aircraft. Okay, so takeoff power is set, and we can look down here and we see toga is enunciated. See, airspeeds are alive. Not quite yet. There we go, airspeeds are alive, and see we're trundling down the runway. Here comes the V1 call. And rotate. So we'll go ahead and we'll pitch up. Keep pitching, keep pitching. Now we'll climb out at about 15 degrees. Because we're in toga, it'll set our flight director there to 15 degrees, nose up. So positive rate, I should do some co-pilot-y type stuff there. So we'll go ahead and select the gear. All red lights. And just lower that nose just a little bit. Okay, so gear is up, lights are out. We'll go ahead and continue with our bastardized after takeoff checklist. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and select LNAV. We probably can select VNAV, and then we'll go autopilot on. So the autopilot should have control. Not quite yet. There we go, autopilot has control. And we just set that to command alpha. And basically the aircraft's just going to do its thing. So IAS mode, I'm actually going to set the speed ourselves here. So let's actually go altitude hold. And we're approaching it, so we'll go vertical speed. Sorry, I'm not showing you the right thing. So vertical speed, altitude hold at 4,000 feet. You'll see the trim wheels just going spastic right now. Flaps are at 0, flaps are going to come up. I'm actually just going to set 220 knots here. No need to get too fast, and we look outside, it's just all white. speeds are starting to build now. We're at 200 knots and we're approaching the Ottawa VOR. We're 10 DME away from, so we should get there fairly quickly now. Keep going through our after takeoff, chaps. Flaps are up, lights are out. We'll check our little gauge here. Gear is off, lights are out, and auto brakes are off. Our engines are on continuous up here. We'll keep those on continuous just because we're in cloud. And we're at 4,000 feet altitude captured, and we're at 220 knots. You can see that here. And we can start now thinking about our arrival, as simple as that. We can see our top of climb is just popping up now. We can see the Ottawa VOR. The other thing is because I have the Ottawa VOR set, when I actually change my course button here, we can see we change what that green line is. So I actually can place it on the FMC outbound there, and if I use course for the captain side, I can change the other line and set it to what our course is there. So I can actually have a split of nav 1, nav 2 and show a real intercept, which is really handy. I don't think the IXEG 737-300 does that, but in any case I can do it here. But now I need to change those courses back again, because we zoom in here, 071, so we'll go ahead and set 071. If you could get 071 on the captain side, please. And 071 is set, and 071 is set and checked. See, now we're approaching Ottawa VOR, so it's all going to happen pretty quickly. I've tried to make it as short a flight as possible, so you just don't have to listen to me rambling on. Obviously, again, we're ignoring the checklist. We're just showing what it looks like on the displays ahead of us in the aircraft. But we're probably going to want to start thinking about slowing down. For this actual turn here, I want to be at about 180, well, I don't want to be at about, I want to be at 180 knots for this turn with flaps at 5. So we'll start configuring the aircraft for that now. So if we could set 180 on the speed, please. And what we can see is we'll start to see our, basically our flap schedule will start popping up on the speed tape here. We need the engines are spooling down, and we can see that over there. So engines are spooling down. Now what I need to go ahead and do is actually set my approach speed. So we'll come over to our FMS here, the FMS, and we'll go to the approach, and we're going to be 30 degrees of flap, so it's 139. And we've set that down here in the flap speed tape. We'll go ahead and add 5 to that, so our final approach speed is going to be 144, which we'll set up here, but just not quite yet, So you see we're in the bank, we're at 185, and we should go ahead and select flaps 1, and we can now start seeing the flap schedule come up. So as soon as I selected flaps 1, we're at 1. With the Boeing, I'll now select the next stage of flaps at 1, so once I get to 2, once I see the airspeed tape is down to 2 here, that's when I'll pull flaps 5. But in this case, I want flaps 5 for this turn. So we'll get the aircraft slowed up and configured for landing. So we'll go ahead and go flaps are identified. So here we are, flaps are identified. Flaps are 5, we can confirm that here. Have a look at our gauge here. Also, a bit of a simism with this aircraft is the real gauge is up here, but we haven't made it mechanical yet. So we just use a digital gauge here on the engine display there. Speaking of which, we should start thinking about our pre-landing check, which we're again just going to bastardize. So I'll select our auto brake, we'll go to 2, it's something I always forget online, right? Speed brake we'll set to arm, so we'll lift it just over, there's a bit of a gate there, so we'll lift it over the gate. We'll see speed brake is armed and enunciated up on the captain side there. And when the speed brakes actually extend, you'll actually see a, this light should come on. Speed brake extended. Okay, it's not doing it. Whatever. Arm the speed brake. Aircraft is being a little bit on the cantankerous side. So where autopilot is engaged, I'm not touching the controls are just doing control-y things. And the autopilot's flying the aircraft. We're at, what, about 7.5 degrees nose up, maintaining altitude. And we got 60% power on, which is pretty typical. That's just about what you want to see. And we're approaching this turn here, so this is our final approach turn onto the localizer here. So for this turn, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll come off LNAV, we'll accept VOR LOC, And then once we start seeing that the glide slope is alive, then we'll switch down to approach mode, and then our altitude will not mean anything to us from then on. But we're well configured for the actual arrival here, and it's probably a few minutes away. We'll start our turn. Trying to think if there's anything else I can show you guys while we're in here on the actual arrival. Well, everything else, I guess, here, everything is functional. So even these switches here, I can manually set the speed reference points, V1, VR, and VREF. All of these points I can set manually. Same as the N1, so that's just in case the FMS was giving me erroneous readings, or maybe it didn't have, I wanted to add my own personal or company procedures to the actual arrival there. So we're still waiting for this turn to pop up, and we can see we're still really in the fog. There's just nothing out here. We're not going to see anything until the runway starts to show up at about 200 feet is when I'm expecting to see it. Where are we at? We're approaching Visual, so the turn should be starting in probably a minute or so. Let's go ahead and have a look down here. So yeah, actually let's go ahead and make our transfers here. So I'm going to transfer over to the Localizer, and the Localizer set on nav 1 and nav 2. Perfect. So 109.5 is set left and right. So then when we engage our second autopilot here, we'll be right. Okay, so the aircraft's about to start turning, and we can see glide slope is alive. So we're starting this turn. Once we cross about, what I'm talking about here is once we cross about this 45, we'll go ahead and we'll engage VOR lope. But we'll just hold off here, and it looks like we're going to have to start descending. So I'm going to set down to 3. Will give us a vertical speed of about 500 foot a minute. We can hear the trim wheel just going a little bit crazy there. We'll start configuring for landing nice and early, just so we have a little bit of time to deal with this. So we increase this rate of descent. And the Localizer should be coming alive now, so I've just gone ahead and engaged it. We'll wait for the Localizer. There we go, Localizer is alive, glide slope is alive. We'll now go ahead and arm the approach mode, and we'll see that loc capture is not quite captured. We're still let 2-dot deflection. Glide slope, we really need to start descending now. Need to catch back up with this glide slope and bring the speeds back down to, what did we say, 143? 144. We'll start bringing the flaps out now. We're a little bit behind the aircraft here, so there we go. We just captured the approach. We're showing single channel, and approach mode is captured, so we're going to bring the speeds to 15 degrees at flaps. Gear is identified, gear is coming down. Altitude is not required now that we have single channel enunciated, and let's go and engage Command B, and we'll get these speed brakes out, and we can see now we're just starting to get a little bit more configured. We're a little bit fast, but hey, that's okay. We're trying to do 5 things at once here. So okay, now the first thing we'll see is we see radar altimeter is alive, so we're 2,000 foot above the ground. We can see we've got the depiction of the runway, where glide slope is captured, less than 1-dot deflection. Localizer is less than 1-dot deflection. We're at flaps 15. Let's go ahead and keep bringing the flaps down to 130. Speeds are set at 144. Altitude will just be set for our go-around, which is 3,000 feet. And we basically monitor the approach. Once we go through 1,000 feet, we want to actually see under this panel here that we'll see flare is armed. Once we see flare is armed in this top panel here, there's an acronym I've forgotten. Once we see flare is armed, we'll call that out, and we should start seeing that pretty soon. The single channel is just saying right now it's only the left-hand autopilot that's flying the aircraft. Once it goes out of single channel mode, we'll be in the AutoLand captured area. And again, we'll look outside, we can't see shit. We'll clear this FMC reset, course error, blah, 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 that's fine. There we go, we've just gone over to command mode. We see flare is enunciated. So now that we know flare is enunciated, the aircraft is going to land itself. As a pilot, I need to start getting ready for that now. So the aircraft won't actually, the AutoLand won't actually get the nose straight. So once the wheels hit the ground, I'm actually going to be controlling the aircraft with my feet. And of course, I also need to bring the reversers out as required. 1,000-foot checks. Gear is down, 3 green, flaps are at 30, and speed brake is armed, auto brake is set. We'll bring the auto brake up a little bit just because the weather's a little bit crappy. We'll look outside, still can't see anything. and we're below 1,000 feet now, so we are committed. Well, not really necessarily committed, but we're flying it down to minimums at least, and then we'll let the AutoLand do everything else itself. So again, if I was a real pilot, I'd have my hands on the stick and get ready to take over at any particular point. If one of the autopilots failed here, that's what we would do. We're flying VREF, everything else is looking fine and dandy, and we're approaching 500 feet. Still can't see anything outside. 500 checks.
400.
Still not visual. Have a look outside, still not visual. And here we go, I'm starting to see trees. We'll still look outside, still can't see anything, still can't see anything. We'll now see the runways approaching, There's the runway lighting, we can now start to see it. We'll let the aircraft go through the flare. It's giving us the retard function. Wheels are on the ground, there's an aircraft on the runway. Anyway, we'll disregard that. Thrust reversers are set. Decel. And we'll have a look up there, see the reversers are out. Here comes 80 knots, and we'll keep flying 60 knots, out go the reversers. There we go, that was an AutoLand. And we can see here we've got the AutoLand on top of another aircraft, right? We can see there's a depiction of the actual runway. So yeah, that was what, 100 foot, we actually went visual there, and we were able to fly the whole approach into another aircraft, and oh well. Oh well, that's, we didn't know it was there, we didn't have any ATC, and it was black, so it shouldn't have been there. So yeah, this is the visual we have outside. It's not much, it's probably, I don't know, maybe a quarter-mile viz out there right now, and yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoy that. That should be a good little clip for you for some in-flight entertainment, and a good little look at the sim that we got here. Anyway, I'll chat to you guys back in stream.